Hello. Today I'd like to talk about how to reduce anxiety about the future especially, and why does anxiety occur, and what we can do to lower it. So first let's talk about why does it occur? What is anxiety? And I'd like you to imagine the computer. When the computer is working on a heavy task and it cannot solve it, especially, it starts to heat up. The same thing happens with our mind, because our mind, we have two navigational system for life. We have our rational mind or logical mind or analytical mind, let's call it the computer, and we have our intuition, deeper wisdom, innate intelligence, also different names. That is another tool we'll talk about. So when we use our rational mind, or rather when the rational mind is trying to predict the future, it's trying to control the future, when it's trying um, to see what is in the future, and it cannot see it because there are just too many variables, too many unknowns about the future, it starts to heat up. And when it heats up, we feel anxious. So I was recently having conversations with people facing different situations in life, deciding whether or not to have a child or to stay at work or what profession to choose. And the same thing happening between them was that the mind was spinning, trying to regurgitating the same ideas they already had, the same professions or the same arguments whether or not to have a child. It was spinning, but nothing was coming out, no result, no answer, and they only felt anxious and they felt stuck. So that's what happens when we try to use the mind where it cannot be you, where it shouldn't be used, or where it's not effective. Because like any tool, the mind is a tool. It's useful for some situations, but it's not useful for other situations. And it's a perfect, it's fair, it's an excellent tool to be used for solving day-to-day issues, calculating things, estimating the distance to some place, calculating the budget, learning a skill, researching information online. These kind of things are perfect for the mind to tackle, and it loves to tackle it. It's like a dog that loves to chew on the bone, yeah. But when it tries to predict the future, it can't really, and we feel anxious. Um, so we have another tool. We have intuition. But unfortunately, many of us forgot how to use it, or it kind of atrophied because we just we either don't trust it, or we don't know it exists, or we think it's unreliable. Yeah, and it happens because over the years we have been so heavily relying on our mind. We have been so heavily using it in school, in the university, at work. So we forgot that we have another tool for navigating life. And intuition is a much stronger tool because it knows what's best for us going forward. It cannot communicate it so clearly, so rationally as the mind. It cannot give all the reasons why as the mind can when it tries to rationalize something. But the intuition can point us in the direction of where we need to go. And when we go there, there will be another pointer and another pointer and another pointer. And we're moving in a beautiful um, trajectory of life rather than trying to control, to box it in, to predict it, and all of that coming out of fear, which we'll see later. So there's a famous quote by Steve Jobs, yeah, that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward, and that's exactly what we're talking about. That we cannot see the dots looking forward, but we know that they will connect if we have the trust in our intuition, if we can trust following it. And what stops us from following it is the fear of the mind. So the mind is really afraid. That's why it tries to predict the future. And it's most afraid of, it has conscious fears, and it has a deeper unconscious fear. So the conscious fears are different, and they sound something like, I'm afraid to make a mistake, to make the wrong decision because I'm going to lose money, or I'm going to lose time, or I'm going to make the wrong choice. And what if people criticize me? I'm going to, screw up at my work. All those are conscious fears. Those are rational fears, right? But underneath them all, there's a deeper fear that is the really the only fear the mind has, and that is the fear of death. So it may sound strange. How can death be a fear of choosing a profession, for example? But the mind operates this way. So the mind says, if you make a mistake here, if you choose the wrong profession and you're going to invest the money in it, and you're going to invest time in it, and what if it doesn't work out? And if it doesn't work out, you're going to be left without a job, and maybe you will not be able to make money. You'll be without money. You can't buy food. You can't pay for the apartment. You'll be homeless. You're going to die. So the last part is unconscious. We don't really uh, give ourselves, like, we don't really know that it's there, but it affects our decisions. So the mind is really trying in its own way to protect us from dying. That's why it's very serious for the mind. For the mind, it's like the question literally of life and death, right? That's why it's so heavy at work trying to predict the future. But the cure here is that when we let the mind know that we're not gonna die, no matter what happens in the future, we're gonna find a way, and we're not gonna die. The mind then starts to slow down. It starts to calm down, and when it comes down, there is more and more space for our insights, for our innate wisdom, for our intuition to shine through. Imagine it like a cloudy sky. The sky is completely overcast, we know the sun is there. It's behind the clouds, but it cannot really shine through. We know it's there, but we can't really see it. We can't feel it. But once the clouds start to clear up a little bit here and there, the more they clear up, the more there is space for the sun to shine through. And the same thing happens with our mind. When our mind is so busy trying to control the future and really spinning, thinking, overthinking, there is no space for our intuition to communicate with us. There is no space for an original idea to come. There is no space for an insight to come that will show us what to do next. That will show us beyond the reasons. We're just going to know what to do next. But for this, we need some space. And for this space to occur, we need the mind to slow down, to calm down, to let the mind know that we're going to be all right. So before the way to do that, let's talk about this. The way to let the mind know that we're going to be all right is to look back at your life. And I want you to think about really, really challenging situations in your life. It could be something at the university or at school, like some difficult subject and you weren't not sure if you're going to pass it, or it could be something at relationship with your family or your loved one. It could be some difficult project at work. It could be some emergency that happened, maybe some health related issue that really strained you and really like made you unsure whether you're going to make it or not. And I want you to, because we all have them, we all have those situations in the past. So I want you to look back, and now I want you to see that you have made it. You could handle it. You handled it all the way to here. Well, no matter what challenging situation happened before, you've made it. Because you're listening, you're watching this video right now, right? So even if it was some like life-threatening situation, you've made it, and you're now here. And because you're here, you can now extrapolate it in the future, and see that if you've made it here, if you've made it in the past, you can make it in the future. You will find a way, no matter what happens, no matter what circumstance happens, no matter what challenging situation happens, you will find a way, you will handle it. And when you know that you will handle it, the mind can start to kind of go like this, like, right? It can start to slow down, to relax, because it knows that you're not gonna die. And that's its primary job, to protect you from dying. And when it goes like this, there's more space, there's more spaciousness. And I also want you to reflect, to look back in the past and think about the turning points in your life. The most important events that occurred from, say, when you're 15 up until the present moment, right? It could be meeting your partner or meeting your loved one. It could be choosing a career. or choosing which job to take. It could be some books or some movies or some resources that deeply impacted you and changed maybe even the trajectory, the course of your life. So if you look back at those things, and it could be useful to stop the video or to do it after the video, to just write down some turning points of your life, the major events of your life, can be incredibly powerful to reflect in this way about the life, because we don't really think about the past in this way, right? You will see likely, I think, that all those moments happened not because you had planned them, not because you had analyzed the situation and find the most rational solution or the most rational path. They most likely happened because just because they happen, just because you intuitively chose that book, or you intuitively talked to that person, or you intuitively chose that job, or the opportunity found you and you talked to that person and then they offered you a job, something like that. You'll see that you had already followed your intuition before, and it had led you beautifully up until now. But the thing is that we can see it in the past, but we don't think it's going to happen in the future. For some reason we think that it's the mind is thinking like it stops here, right? It says no, it was okay back then, but now we really need to control it, now we really need to predict it. And that's what the mind thinks. But if it's been leading you, if life has been leading you up until now, it will keep leading you later as well. If we just follow its guidance, if we follow the breadcrumbs, if we follow the intuitive nudges, if we follow the navigation of our intuition instead of the rational mind. And we also must realize that the mind wants to keep its job. As we all do, we want to keep our job. We want to be useful, right? So that's why the mind is always solving problems, even though they have no connection, no relevance to the present moment. We all had experience. We're on vacation, and then we start thinking about some presentation 2 weeks from now that will happen when we come back, and we know it's not useful. We know there's nothing we can do to affect it. Or there's some situation at work, but now it's a weekend. We can do nothing about it. But the mind is chewing on it. It's thinking about it, and they're thinking about it because it wants to keep its job. It always solves problems. The mind is like a firefighter that is so afraid to lose its job that it goes out and it sets a house on fire, and then it starts putting the fire down, right? Because it thrives on complexity. The mind thrives on solving problems. And like any tool, if it's used properly, it's a beautiful tool. I'm not saying that we should abandon our rational mind. We just need to learn to use it rather than being used by it. So when we use it to solve problems that can be solved and that are relevant for the moment, it's a beautiful tool. But when the mind is running our life, running us to solve problems, imagined problems in the future that have not even occurred and probably will not occur, that's the problem. That's the situation we need to change. And how often it happened that we worry about something in the future, about some presentation at work, say, and then that presentation happens, and we think about the colleagues, what would they say, what the boss will say, how is it going to be, what if we screw up, all of those things, we keep regurgitating them, and then it happens, and nothing happened that we were afraid of. And at this moment the mind doesn't go like, oh, I'm sorry, I spent so much energy and our time thinking about it, and it turned out to be useful. The mind is already thinking about something else in the future, right? So we never realize that it has been useless. All this worry has been useless. So whenever we think about the future, it's just not useful to use our rational mind. It's just not powerful. It's not the right tool to navigate life. It's not the right tool to navigate life. And the more we see the past, how life has already led us beautifully up until the present moment, the more we can see that it will also continue leading us forward. And the more we can trust the intuition, the more we can start to use it like an arm that after an injury, atrophied. We now need to use the muscle again to get it back in shape. The same with intuition. We need to use it more and more, to lean on it in small life situations, like choosing what movie to watch tonight, or choosing what meal to order, whether to go to a restaurant or to order food home, whether to meet with a friend or to stay at home. All those little moments in life, not the major decisions yet, the little moments. Just listen to your feeling, and just see what it does it tell you, and start to lean on towards it a little bit. Start to use it, and the more you use it, the more you will trust it, and the more accessible it will be, and the more the louder it will be, so that you can listen to it more. So I hope it, after this video, as a result, you now know that you have two tools. Just to recap, you have the rational mind and you have the intuition. And the reason for anxiety is that the rational mind is trying and cannot predict the future, because it's not the right tool. And the mind is trying to keep its job, and the mind is trying to protect you from death, which is the ultimate fear it has. But once the antidote to this, the solution to this, is to see that in the past you have already successfully handled all kinds of challenges, which means that in the future you will also be able to handle all kinds of challenges, and you don't even have to know what they are. You can handle it. That's the ultimate. That's the master key to all the mind's fears. I am afraid of dying. I'm afraid I can't handle it. I can handle it. No matter what happens, I can handle it. So I hope it's been useful. I'm aware that it's over 17 minutes. I hope it's been useful, and then now you know that you have the two tools. And once the mind starts to slow down, your inner wisdom, your inner intuition can shine through. And the calmer the mind, the less thinking there is in our mind, the more beautiful the feeling, and the higher the likelihood to hear the next insight that will lead us forward. Yeah. Okay, until next time, hope it's been useful, and yeah, lean more on your intuition, trust it more, and it will tell you the next point, the next breadcrumb to follow, and just trust that. Bye bye.